in. Now, joining me for, I love this part of the show, of course, the paper review. It's someone you all know very well, Andrew Eborn, barrister and broadcaster. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Nick, and what a joy it is to join you. Well, I love the energy of today's show.
Yes, very good, really, from a 64-year-old grumpy old so-and-so, whereas you get all the young Peter Cardwell and all his...
I thought you were in your 30s and just had a tough paper round. I thought that was the one. It's going to be good.
The voice of experience.
Absolutely, always a thrill.
So what's caught your eye?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's some good news for a
Excellent.
change, because we're drowning in a sea of disinformation and bad news, but a couple of great stories. And in the Times, first of all, blood test promises fast cancer diagnosis, which is a brilliant story, because what they've done, a simple blood test for more than 50 types of cancer will accelerate early diagnosis. And as we know, early diagnosis can lead to all sorts of treatments on a really, really positive basis. And also, that's in the Times, but also another sort of game-changing drug which could boost breast cancer survival rates, which is fantastic. And what they're saying is that treatment could cut the risk of recurrence by 25% for the most common form of the disease.
And this is huge news. And just as an aside, can I point out to the lefty objectors here, guess who made these discoveries? Oh, it was the pharmaceutical companies that are always the target of the left more often than not. But on the blood tests, two things about this. I used to think that blood tests might pick up indicators anyway.
Right.
And of course they don't, and I've learnt through a close family member who's had to go through a lot of biopsies and so forth, that actually, if this proves workable, because it's still early days, but there's good evidence to support the claim, this means you have less invasive treatments, don't you?
And it is brilliant. And there have been seismic changes in medicine, in AI and robotics and so on and so forth. And we should be screaming this from the rooftops rather than just the bad news. So, and the pharmaceutical industry is superb on that sort of basis. And so what's happened, we've now discovered 100% of the sequencing of DNA. Now, what that means is going forward, we can basically cure all diseases. We can work out what's causing it and basically target that accordingly. And on a positive story, and we're going to come on to AI in a bit as well, the AI has discovered a new antibiotic that can kill a deadly species of superbug, and that's basically having 1 million people affected on that sort of basis.
Because people are very concerned about antibiotics overuse has led to antibiotics that don't work. So, OK, now look, I know you want to move on to AI. You've just said something. AI has discovered a new superbug.
Yes.
What is this? Have we just empowered this thing called artificial intelligence and said, here's a problem, go and sort it, and it comes back with an answer?
Absolutely.
Like this?
And the great thing is I'm probably one of the biggest advocates for artificial intelligence around the world.
What if it takes your job?
Well, it will take everybody's job, and it's been predicted that 300 million people will lose their jobs to AI and robotics. But at the same time, PwC's predicted, and I think it was Goldman Sachs who gave us that statistic, PwC have said it's going to contribute about 15 trillion to the economy. Like all technology, there's a revolution. We've gone an industrial revolution. We're now going through a technology revolution. Jobs will change over time.
But is it over time? Because the letter that was signed by lots of AI champions were talking about in 5 years you could be seeing this sort of impact. Admittedly, they said 5 to 50 years. But, you know, this could be quite a threat to people.
Well, we're seeing, basically, Stephen Hawking said it's our greatest human achievement, but also the biggest existential threat. And in fact...
So was the nuclear weapon.
Exactly, and that's the point. And you'll find good stories and bad stories about that. And there was a story, I mean, today, actually, just got released overnight. The Air Force colonel raises alarm on the rise of a rogue AI. And what happened, it was an American system, Colonel Tucker Chinko Hamilton. And he talked about an AI
they always
test.
have such stupid names.
It's not
Chinko.
Tucker Hamilton.
I mean, just they have to do it. It's like footballers.
Well, what would your middle name be?
End with a Y.
That's going to be good.
My middle name is actually Nicholas.
I know it is.
So I that's a sensible name, but no one's added onto it something like Chinko.
What would you like to be called, given the choice? If you moved to America and you're American broadcast, what would you have?
I would expect them to call me Nicholas.
Oh, there's none of this Nick, none of this sort of lobbing a bit of. But basically, they did a test. So the US Air Force did a test using AI, and they had, basically the AI would get points if it could destroy targets and so on and so forth. But they always had a human override which said, "Don't kill." What happened is the AI said, well, actually, I'm not going to get my points if I obey this order. So it killed in the test its commander, which was really rather worrying. So they say you've got to have safeguards in there. The other big thing as well, Nick, is the disinformation which is spread. AI can create all sorts of artificial things. We've had Drake and The Weeknd doing a collaboration. The internet went crazy because they said this is the first time they've collaborated for years, and it was in fact created by AI. We had a picture of the Pope in a white puffer jacket, which went everywhere.
And it wasn't the Pope.
Well, it was completely created by artificial intelligence. What happened is the devil may like Prada, but the Pope prefers puffer. So you work on that sort of basis.
Well, then basically, what do we trust?
Well, trust nothing is the short answer. You have to question everything. And part of the safeguards you need is protection against disinformation, the spread of misinformation. What we're talking about is chatbots. And there was a case about a lawyer this week who basically in New York used the chatbot to come up with an argument about a case against an airline and that sort of stuff. And unfortunately, they cited all these cases in court. And the judge said, hang about, these cases don't sound familiar. And it turned out they were all made up. So the lawyer relied on this chatbot because the chatbot doesn't like not being able to give an answer, rather like a politician.
Now, I'm going to pause you there because you were having a pop at my fellow former colleagues, politicians, but you're quite right. Chatbox likes to give an answer. I get that. Sometimes, however, the answer's pretty unhelpful, I thought. But what I'm more interested in is you sort of said you kind of have to have checks on disinformation. Yes. Well, hang on. You've picked up a story, haven't you, on a disinformation unit within the government.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's not a bad thing if you have to have checks on disinformation.
But if it were just that, and this is what about ministers had a secret unit to curb critics of lockdown. Now, you're absolutely, there's a balance to this story. You have to stop the spread of disinformation, but at the same time, there's a risk about curbing freedom of speech. And this has just been revealed, and the Telegraph screaming from their front page, a secretive government unit worked with social media companies in an attempt to curtail discussion on lockdown policies. Now, that's the problem.
Well, that's the claim, but I'm slightly concerned about this secretive bit, because I knew about this about a year ago. I remember reading about them setting up a rebuttal unit. So they said, there's disinformation out there. You've got claims that are unsupported. We are going to have a rebuttal unit to challenge them. Where I agree with you is if that report is right, and I used a choice word to my producer because I'm not convinced.
Yes.
It's something watch, isn't it?
Absolutely. They call it the Counter Disinformation Unit. The CDU was set up to do it.
Now, the point I would go on to make is if the report is accurate, that they targeted 3 individuals because they said things which I think were absolutely legitimate, like we shouldn't be closing schools during COVID. You know, that would be an abuse of power.
Absolutely.
It's been robustly denied, of course.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. I have to go back to what I said beforehand. You need to question everything. And the headlines, the big word in that is if. Yeah. So you're right. If it is stifling free speech and somebody just speaks out about the government, that is outrageous and a complete curtailment of a human right for freedom of speech. You need to have dissenting voices in any healthy democracy, and that's the point to look at. Where you're stopping the spread of disinformation, or in the case of AI, where they have these hallucinations, where they make things up, that is absolutely right, and we need to look at that sort of side. But it is a balance. But the story, they break. Sometimes you don't let the truth stand in the way of a good story. You sometimes go for the headline, work on that sort of basis, and it's a bit worrying.
I always said when during my time in Parliament, anyone who asked me and said, I saw that in the papers you were linked to arms dealing, which is like, I used to build exhibition stands and it included aerospace and defence companies. But I always said to them, when you get a headline, I said, if you're not going to read the story, divide it by 2, even if it's in praise of me, divide it by 2, or if it's attacking me, divide it by 2, because they are designed to catch your attention and not necessarily be factually based.
It's always right. P.T. Barnum, the great showman, always used to say, if you want to draw a crowd, start a fight. And the media are always going for those sensational headlines. You've got a number of examples of that, which we may come on to.
I'm going to interrupt this wonderful flow we're having because I want to take a call. We've been asking people, and people are getting very communicative on this, about Brexit being the cause of food price rises. Very briefly, How much credit do you place on that story?
Well, it's interesting. Actually, it came as a result of something in the Eye this weekend. The UK blames Brexit for the higher food prices. And it's a bit bizarre because they do a little survey and you're asking people, do you believe this? Well, that's not. But whether you believe it or not,
doesn't make it true.
So
that's
63% believe that leaving the EU is driven by rapid food inflation. The polling suggests. Well, so what? You can ask another number of people who say nobody does.
But what's fuelled that is actually the Centre for Economic Performance, whoever they are.
Yes.
They say they've done a study that shows about 1/3 of our cost increases is down to Brexit. And I don't believe that. I do believe there has been some impact. I'm not being foolish about this. The idea that when you've got Ukraine, when you've got this massive quantitative easing where inflation was coming up even before the war, I think this is just Brexit being the punch bag.
You're absolutely right, Nick. We live in a diseased information world, and the more that we can do in the media to correct that, the better. But
we will do that, and so will, I think it's Manuel in Liverpool.
Manuel?
Yes, Manuel, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, you want to... you're from Spain, and you'd like to convince us that Brexit is the problem, would you, on food prices?
Well, of course is the cause of all of this.
Why?
Okay, I just come back from Spain on holiday.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the price of a coffee in Spain compared to the UK.
What, in a cafe or in a supermarket?
In a cafe or in a supermarket. Okay, a packet of coffee in a supermarket in Spain is €1.80, and that is a 400 grams packet. Okay. Now, if you go to a bar, you will pay in between 80 cents and £1, €1.20, and that's coming with a toast included.
I tell you, when I go in, I've got a house in Spain. When I go in and order a coffee, I don't get it for €1.20. There's a heck of a premium on it. It's more like €2.50.
That's right. Whereabouts in Spain were you shopping, Manuel?
Okay, this is Cádiz, the very edge of Cádiz. Yeah. Okay. If you go to a small town called Vejer de la Frontera, and you find many bars and places in the morning are absolutely packed of ladies or men who's going to take the kids to the school in the morning. Okay. Now, talking about any other things, supermarket food. Okay, you go to the supermarket here and you will be paying, I don't know, for a can of...
Yeah, but listen, you can... Manuel, let me ask you, why is it Brexit, though?
Yes.
Because there's we can all talk about price differentials, and I can talk to you about the price of olive oil, which is down to weather shortages. It's most expensive it's ever been. But why is it Brexit?
Well, it is Brexit because, obviously, we, at the moment, we are paying more for anything they need to import from any other country, and this is the truth.
Well, I don't think you can substantiate that claim. For example, we've reduced taxes on imports from other countries outside the EU, where the EU citizens will pay more because we've been able to do that. So I think it needs a little bit more substantiation. I understand why you're making the claim, but I'm not getting any real evidence from you.
Well, the real evidence to me, it will be, I compare myself in between going to Spain and come back here. And when I see the prices here, what's the reason for
well, I'll tell you, there's different subsidies, aren't there? There's huge different subsidies in Spain, in France, and we don't give the same subsidies.
Well, why we don't get the same subsidies? Why? What is the reason?
But it's a different thing. Can I just clarify a couple of points, Manuel, as well? We touched on earlier where they said there are other factors that might be relevant. Do you think that the war in Ukraine had any effect on price?
I do believe it has, but not to the point of putting everything up in price to this point, really.
But it's one of the factors. And we talked about other factors as well. Do you think there might be other factors that might contribute?
Of course.
Fantastic. So it's one of the factors that you can look at. Is that fair to say?
And there you are. You're bringing consensus to the call.
Wonderful.
That is a typical lawyer.
Thank you very much. I'm here all week.
Thank you, Thank you, Manuel.
Thanks,
Manuel, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Liverpool. Just time to go to Anthony in Leeds. Anthony.
Hi, Anthony.
Hello.
Yes, morning.
Good morning to you. Welcome. Food prices. Government's to blame, I think, is what you think, yeah?
All them in Parliament are to blame. All them. We voted to leave. I voted to leave the European Union.
Right.
And them bunch of cowards in Parliament ain't carried it out. They're to blame. All of them.
Well, yeah.
They've all been trying to stop it from 2016.
But they haven't. It's happened.
They had a job to do, and that was to leave the next day. So why didn't we leave in 2016?
Well, then, look, fair enough. That is an old battle. You're absolutely right. Parliament disgraced itself by trying to stop us leaving, but we've won that.
Should have been sacked.
But isn't your point really that we haven't taken advantage of Brexit sufficiently?
Yeah, because they didn't want to. That's why.
Well, I think a Boris Johnson-led election and government was pretty keen to do it. I'm not so sure how the Rishi Sunak government's doing it, but Boris Johnson missed the opportunity.
Because he's been told what to do. I tell you what it is. It's North and South divide. It's all them in London are to blame. Them. I told you before, London is a European city. We should move that Parliament from London. In York.
Well, maybe, but all the MPs, there's only about 50 MPs that come from London. An awful lot more come from the north and the west and the east and the Midlands. But thank you. We welcome all views here on Talk Radio. Even Talk TV. you can tell I haven't been on air for a while, haven't you? Listen, join the conversation. Do you think Brexit is to blame for the food rises? Food inflation, 19%. I mean, come on, that's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? Even for a Remainer. 0344 499 1000 or tweet me at Nick Dubois. Right, welcome back. Morning, Nick. The increase in food prices surely began when the cost of fuel rose sharply along with the increase in energy prices. Up until then, there wasn't a problem. Well, that's absolutely fair to point out, that the idea that Brexit has accounted for it, however many years, 2020 we came out officially. Yeah, very well made point. I think the other answer to this is, don't forget, one opinion poll that is quoted on the front of The Independent is what people think. So the narrative that Brexit is bad is gaining more traction than the facts. That's the key here. And you know, you're going to get this. This is raised here. Brexit was 7 years ago. The inflation started 7 months ago. I think it was a little longer than that, but not much. Europe has similar inflation to us. Why is Brexit to blame? Says Matt in Ruislip. So as far as I'm concerned, this debate is more about the old bash Brexit or praise Brexit, whichever side of the argument you come from. I don't think it contributes very much to the debate.
I think you're right, Nick. I think what you need to do is arm people with facts, and then you can get opinion. And I think you turn.
Can we trust those facts, or are they artificial intelligence facts?
Question everything. Yeah. Make sure, but you should always do that. You need to make sure that things are peer verified and so on and so forth. It's only by presenting those facts, like our wonderful caller Manuel, who basically agreed with us at the end because he said it was one of those factors. We'll have a look at the other ones as well.
But he didn't start off there, and isn't that the point? That it's easy to simplify the argument, which is what the tabloid eye is doing.
And that's the problem. It's slogan politics, which I'm always against.
Soundbite started by Tony Blair.
Done. This is what you do. You work on that basis.
Mind you, it worked, didn't it?
Well, that's what happens. See what happens next time.
So I'm an old-fashioned low-tax Tory.
Yes.
Tell me about your next story.
Well, it's all about the wealthy fleeing the UK to avoid inheritance tax, and this is in the Telegraph, and it's things that I've been speaking about for ages. You work all of your life, you pay lots and lots of taxes, and then all of a sudden when you die, the basic principle is anything over £325,000, you're going to pay 40% on, or your estate is, and your children and people you want to benefit.
Over the allowance.
They're going to do that. A slight exception for your main house, £175,000 extra if you have an estate less than 2 million. But what they say is, look, if you look at a place like Sweden, which has abolished this, actually the whole country is flourishing as a result. And my personal view is that you should abolish inheritance tax. Why should it be that you work all of your life, you pay taxes and so on and so forth, and then your children effectively have to pay a huge amount in tax accordingly? We're all basically, a lot of people are property rich and cash poor. So you get your main private residence, which has shot up through the roof.
What I think is interesting, and I totally agree with you. I don't like this idea that you're paying tax again on the money that you've already paid tax on when you actually want to pass it on to generations when you're dead. I think it's an abhorrent tax. I absolutely loathe its very existence. 50 MPs have come up and said to the Conservative Party you shouldn't do this. We'll be talking about that later with George Dibbs from the Centre of Economic Social Justice, who will be arguing the opposite line. So I'm pleased you've raised it, but kind of let me ask this question. Why do we get so anxious about it when only roughly 4% of the population pay this tax?
Well, because those 4% are already paying, and actually it's going to change. It won't be 4% very soon.
Absolutely.
You have a look and talk about 325,000 pounds. Work out how much your house is worth at the moment. Ask an estate agent, and then work out whether your children are effectively going to have to pay this tax, even though you've basically spent your whole life working, contributing tax on a fair basis. I think it's wrong. I think it's inequitable, and we should scrap it.
And isn't it interesting that the take on inheritance tax has gone up from something has gone up huge proportion
absolutely.
In the last year. It's a relatively small amount. I think it raises 7 billion for the
7.1 billion. I'll look out for the 0.1.
But it is a abhorrent idea, and I think the reason people don't like it, and it can change the fortunes of a political party, as it did for David Cameron and George Osborne when he announced a £1 million threshold before you paid tax, is that people don't like the idea of it, whatever you may be earning.
And basically it puts people with that sort of tragedy. You have to raise the money pretty quickly. So trying to sell the house in the market and so on and so forth, the pressure it puts on the heirs is pretty horrendous.
You can end up taking loans out.
And they do. Not only could you. And I think a lot of people are going to realise this is a big thing. But we've got time in the lead up to the election. So what's going to happen? Little rewards and bribes, if you like, are available.
Well, there's one problem. We've got two tax-raising main parties. You've got a tax-raising Conservative Party. They'll say they've got very good reasons for it. You've got a tax-raising Labour Party. There is no alternative. You know, the small parties are just not going to get there.
Well, what will happen, as in the lead-up to election, you're going to have all these sort of wriggle room, if you like, that these giveaways can happen. So whether it's all about immigration, it's all about tax, it's all about that sort of stuff, and that's going to start hitting the headlines.
Yeah, but if Jeremy Hunt comes out and says, I'm going to knock 1 penny off your tax before the election, just remember what freezing the tax thresholds currently and up to 2028 is doing to your income. If you're a high earner, you'll be paying £1,000 more. If you're a middle earner, an ordinary rate taxpayer, it'll be £500. So remember that when you get your 1 penny off.
So what I love, Nick, as well, is that we're shining a spotlight on that. Whenever you see the headline, what we've encouraged people to do, like Manuel, who's now going to be our poster boy.
You've really taken to him.
I know, but it's fantastic because he converted on air in front of you. It was the road to Damascus moment. I loved it. It's going to be good.
Such a consensus. I'm very impressed.
It's very good. But you work on that principle. Give people the facts. People are not stupid out there. Give them the facts, let them form their own opinion. But rather than just turning around and say, this is what's happening, let people have the information they can rate.
Can I just say, this is from a lawyer and broadcaster, and lawyers, of course, give the facts and put their complete slant on it to defend or whatever they do. Very well done. What next have you got?
Well, what I love is, let's go for some positive news.
Yes.
I love these fun stories. So, I love silver snogging, says the wonderful Pru Leith, who's 83, and she's been talking at the Hay Festival and saying that she loves kissing in her 80s and is as pleasurable now as it was when she's a teenager, but she's not a fan of kissing on television.
Well, anyone kissing on television.
Well, I think the wrinklies is what she says.
She says in that article, isn't she, that we get embarrassed seeing older people kiss. I completely do not. I actually think it's really quite endearing when I see an older couple holding hands, walking down the street, kissing. I mean, medals out. They've either just got married or it's his fifth marriage that they're showing all of this. Okay, I joke before I get the abuse coming in. But I think it's really...
But we love people to bring the abuse as well.
I love the idea. Prue doesn't. She thinks we get all embarrassed.
Well, but she might get embarrassed, and I recognise some people do, but maybe that's a mindset. We should celebrate love in this world that is full of hate and all the sort of negativity. We should celebrate love at any age. The Silver Surfers, let's make sure they enjoy love and celebrate it.
Do you include me in that?
Well, you tell me. Are you a Silver Surfer? Do you have love in your life, Nick?
I always have love in my life. Love of myself. Right. No, of course it is. And I guess what is interesting, I don't know why she said this, why it's suddenly made the newspapers.
It's a publicity thing.
Okay, but is it because she's 83, it says in the paper?
It is 83, but what I love is we want positive stories from growing old disgracefully. That's what I always believe people should do.
I disagree with you, and I think this is why I love Talk TV so much, because I take real pleasure in being a grumpy old so-and-so. I really do.
But I love a world where you're allowed to be a grumpy old so-and-so. I think that's okay. It's good.
Freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is good. If anyone else is out there who's grumpy and wants to call in, come on. We'll have some good news.
We love it. Well, there's another interesting one just on the age thing while we're there. The Olympic fencer who was forced to parry age discrimination claim from his wife. Now, what happened here? This was a guy called Tim Belson who rose to the top of the British fencing in the 70s, and basically he's divorcing his wife, and as a result, because he went off to have an affair with another woman, and she was saying that they were working together. She basically said in court and in front of the tribunal that this was age discrimination because he went for a younger woman. And has
it been decided?
Well, it has been decided. They said, well, hang about, there's no evidence that bit was age discrimination, and actually she was older than her anyway. But they did let her win her claim for unfair dismissal, because it was about, they said the real reason she was dismissed was she went to go and live with another lover rather than anything to do with her work. So it wasn't about being made redundant, but the fact that she went to go and live with somebody else was the reason he sacked her.
That's not a happy story, though, is it?
Is it happy? It's a mildly amusing one, only because of the people...
Well, not for the participants.
Well, not for the participants at all, but I think it does reach help the decision that basically it's not age discrimination if your spouse goes off with a younger person.
Well, that's good to know. I think it's probably fairly safe to say that if someone is going to embark on leaving someone for a younger version, I'm going to get in trouble here, whatever I say, the chances are being sued for age discrimination is not high on the agenda of your thinking.
Well, it's one way. The lawyers will look at every possible means of combating that, and I think that's all interesting.
Absolutely, yes. Now, listen, I'm just going to read a couple more messages because I think it's actually quite interesting that we are asking you if you think Brexit is to blame for rising food prices. Greetings, Nick. I did hear that vegetables and some fruit increased in price because high rainfall and flooding, correct, caused quite a seasonal, substantial problem with the crops that were growing there, says Susan. She's absolutely right. And it's also another quick one here. Nick, no, Brexit is the excuse to inflate food prices. I was recently in New York and the cost of eating out was as good 30 to 40% more expensive. Fed up with the fact Brexit hasn't been completed or actually done in any way that is a benefit to the UK, says Robin from West Sussex. And I think that's an absolutely fair point to make. You know, it's getting people talking this a lot, and I've got a lot of calls coming in, so I'm going to try and take one more call. I think we've got Susan on the Isle of Wight.
Hi, Susan.
Hello, Susan. Oh, maybe not. Maybe we haven't. Telecommunications breakdown.
She's looking forward to the festival.
That's the problem. It's a failure of Brexit that we haven't got Susan on the line. So we'll press on. Today was a mixed news day.
Yes.
Oh, hang on. We got Susan. She's back.
Welcome back,
Susan.
Hello, Nick. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Susan.
Yeah. It was just to say, it was similar to the comment that you last read out on Brexit. I think it's illogical to say that it can be down to Brexit because we've been out of the EU now for a number of years and it didn't happen straight away. So it hasn't happened, over those years. It's only really badly happening now. And I think it's much more to do with the price of energy and the crazy, idiotic system we have got for setting energy prices here in the UK.
It is utterly flawed, isn't
Europe.
it? Yeah.
And that is a basis for how inflation is happening all over the place because companies have to charge more money, obviously, to cover the prices for their energy.
Do you think there is an element of profiteering going on?
Yes, I do. But I think, again, there's so many reasons why this is happening. I think Brexit is probably the least of them. Well,
I think you put it remarkably well there, Susan. Thank you very much indeed. Very neatly summed up it. I do believe there is profiteering going on. Let me just point to petrol prices. Yes. If anyone's noticed, they are dramatically down at the moment. Why? Oh, guess what? They're about to be investigated for cartel and profiteering. You can now get 143, I saw, for a litre of unleaded, and that about a week ago, or just before this was announced, was 10p higher. Diesel was 20p higher. They've got rid of that. Listen, coming up, plans to ban MPs investigated over violent or sexual offences. Bob Neal, Chair of Justice Select Committee, is going to be with me there. And I still want to know if you think Brexit is to blame for rising food prices. Andrew, great to see you.
Lovely to see you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you
we
so
will
much.
see you again after the news, which is coming up right now.